All right, we're live. It's going to be an amalgamation of Project Game Day and a Stan the Fan Variety Hour. Stan's here, KZ's here, Luke Jackson and Griffin are all here. Obviously, you know what's going on. John Harbaugh is out as Baltimore Ravens head coach. I'm going to start this by just sort of going across the panel, just the John Harbaugh is out part of it. Before we discuss anything else, I just want to start with that. And because KZ has probably been banging the drum for longer than anybody, I'm going to choose to start with him first, and then we'll go one by one.
So my first reaction was I was stunned that they did it because I truly didn't believe that. I thought that they could excuse it away a little bit this year with the injuries and things like that. But Glenn, as you wrote very eloquently, it was time. It was time. The mistakes in my mind that have been made over and over and over again in game. And the fact that the Super Bowl was a long time ago and you can't live on that forever. Um, to me, it was just time for a fresh voice and a fresh leader and I mean, on the human side, I wish him well. He's a good guy. He's a great family man. Always treated me for the brief time I was there very well. But um, it was just time, and I think the organization needs a fresh start and to attempt to get the best out of Lamar Jackson for as long as he has left with this organization and being a top three quarterback in the NFL. Um, and I'm happy about it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was just I'm happy about. I'm not going to sit here and gloat, and people are thinking like I'm going to come on here and start beating my chest and happy, in that way. No, but yes, it's time for a fresh start. It's time to get a coach in here that can make an impact on one side of the ball or the other. And I hope that they go in that direction.
Stan the Fan Charles's presence is brought to us by the Costas Inn, with two great locations, North Point Boulevard and the Grandstand in Timonium. Wherever he is, even on his birthday, he's brought to you by the Costas Inn. Happy birthday, Stan!
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
And go
Eh,
ahead.
The floor is mine. I thought it
Yes.
was going to go around anyway.
Nah, I'm going to you.
Uh,
It's your birthday.
yeah, I'm not gloating about it, but what I find what I find fascinating is I've been preaching this for about 5 years. I was really over Harbaugh. I hated him as an in-game coach. I think he got the most out of his players in the sense that there were very few games his team over 18 years. And I think most of them were this year, despite injuries, where his team almost didn't show up. KZ, I stayed on to watch you talk. Now, he can't stay on for me. Um,
Hmm.
anyway,
Hmm.
I'm kidding, KZ. Kidding. You do what you want to do. Um, but I thought it was time about 5 years ago. The most distressing part to me is they let Mike McDonald walk out of the building 2 years ago. Glenn, you're telling me something I didn't know. I still believe that had they given Mike McDonald a 2 year, $1 million a year raise and said, you're going to be the
Yeah.
coach in 2026, for giving John 2 more years, that he would have stayed because he
Yeah.
would have been making probably $1.7 million at that time.
Yeah. That.
Um, but you're saying I'm gonna, okay, but I would have let go of Harbaugh a couple of years ago and brought in either Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, or Mike Vrabel. Now, the sad part is that now there isn't somebody that's glaringly the guy to replace John Harbaugh. I'm kind of stunned that they did it. As you know, you wrote the column, it's time. I'd been saying it's time, but I wrote the column that the Raven fans deserve better than the dysfunction they had at the top of the power management of this team, where the owner's friendship superseded doing the right thing for the team. I take no joy in it, but I think long term we're going to be a better football team for this move.
Luke Jackson.
Well, 18 years is a hell of a great run in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of coaches out there who don't make it 2 years. So that's a hell of a run for John Harbaugh. And I will
Pete
always,
Carroll had a great run in Las Vegas.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
very
I
similar.
mean, there
Very
are a lot
similar.
more Pete Carrolls out there and with his Vegas tenure than there are John Harbaugh's with his 18-year tenure, that's for sure. And I will always appreciate that up until this year, very few times did it feel like you were wasting your time watching the Ravens on a Sunday. It always seemed like that he had his teams ready to go from an effort standpoint. I think that this year was the first time that he lost by multiple scores with his starting quarterback available since like 2021. I mean, that sort of thing matters to me. That might not matter to everyone else, but it matters to me that when I sit down or I go to a game and I invest time, effort, and energy to watch the Ravens, that I'm going to get a professional effort out of them. And John provided that for the vast majority of his 18 years, and I appreciate that. Uh, from a surprise standpoint, yeah, the inclination that I had was that Steve was going to give him a mulligan, uh, and I'm a little surprised again that in the statement that Steve released, he made no bones about it. This was his
Yeah.
decision. He did not pretend like this was a mutual decision. This was Steve firing John. And I thought that maybe they did reach out to other teams to see what the interest would be and if a trade would be. I don't know, but I was just those are the things that surprised me a little bit. But heck of a run.
I will say a couple things real quick based on what I've been able to gather. One, I'm not. There's the report from Diana Rossini that this was you're going to have to fire Todd Monken or you're gone. And
Mhm.
one, that doesn't make sense because everything you heard from John Harbaugh this season would suggest he probably would have been willing to fire Todd Monken. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I do think there's somewhere in between there that John wasn't really interested in being under the microscope anymore. And in another place, John can basically ask for anything that he wants. Um, the
Oh
New
yeah,
York
I would
Giants,
imagine that if he wants the Giants job, he can bring his own GM,
yeah, he could do
whatever that
whatever.
is,
Exactly right. Yeah.
and the Mara family will say yes, yes. What do
Correct.
you sign?
Correct. And so I do think that part matters, but I would be very surprised based on some of the stuff that I've gathered if that report from Diana is true as written. I think there's something close to that might be true, but I'd be surprised that it's that specifically. I've also gathered a little bit that this wasn't stunning, and there's a reason why, and Griffin and I talked about it a lot this morning. There's a reason why some of these reports from Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport were worded exactly the way they were in the last couple of days, which is nobody knew that Steve was going to do this, but I think there were more people that thought that there was a possibility that Steve was going to do this around the building than was being led on publicly because of the respect that everyone has for John.
Mhm.
And I think it goes back to it's one thing to say that they were devastated injury-wise when they were 1-5. They lost home games to the Steelers and the Bengals with a healthy roster. Like this was not going. Stan, you and I will disagree. I don't think they should have fired, and Ken knows that I disagree. I don't think they should have fired John Harbaugh in the past because I think it mattered that they were winning. I'll always value winning. Winning to me is the end all be all. But they weren't winning this year, period. They could have backdoored their way into the playoffs, but they weren't a good football team. And so this was the time to me. This was the moment. They
Well,
weren't winning. They were going in the wrong
let
direction.
me just jump in. One of the things that I've been told by a number of people is that Steve Bisciotti's business mantra is to accelerate the inevitable. And for some reason, in this relationship that he had, it betrayed him because he hasn't made a lot of mistakes in his business life. And I think sticking with John Harbaugh this long was a mistake. and it allowed several good coaches to get out of his grasp that he could have easily
So
lost.
so one thing, Stan, that you know Bashotti said in his statement is that it's about winning championships. I believe that's the first time we've heard that from him.
Yeah,
In the past, it's always been about being putting a competitive team on the field and being in the mix, as it were, every single year. And to Glenn's point, maybe this is something that, because they were still winning and even, winning regular season and even winning a playoff game here and there over the last 10 years or so, it couldn't, he couldn't make sense of it to pull the trigger. But now that you had not only missed the playoffs, but had a defining losing season, it made it an easier pill to swallow. Again,
Yeah.
we're gonna hear things, but the one thing that came from the statement that Bashotti said that kind of woke me up a little bit. It's the first time, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong. It was the first time I have heard the owner say this is about winning championships.
Yeah, and to be fair, we haven't heard a lot from him in recent
We have not.
years,
We have not.
if at all, frankly. We just haven't heard from. I don't even remember how many years it's been since we've heard Steve Bisciotti in a formal press conference setting at this point. Um, so that is part of the issue. And part of what he has said in the past, Ken, was that the belief in the NFL is that if you are winning, you can win a championship, right? Like that had been the organizational philosophy. If you're winning, you can break through.
Right.
You just got to get in, and then you have a chance.
Yeah,
But
it seems like the organizational philosophy was steadiness,
mhm,
and you put enough championship caliber teams on the field in January that eventually you'll break through,
right.
like they did in that run in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Eventually, they did break through. Enough went their way, and and I will say this, in terms of the Lamar Harbaugh era, people might look at it more kindly in the future than they do now in terms of, I mean, they had a lot of bad luck and they had a lot of weird stuff go against them in big time moments. And I think and ultimately, I think that's uh, maybe in the future, long in the future, we'll think back to all the games they won and about failing in big time moments, and that's
Yep.
and I
I'll
and
tell you, for me, one of the big things, and Glenn, you well know that I haven't liked John as a head
Hmm.
coach for a good while.
Hmm.
But one of the most devastating things I think he did, and it shows a really a positive side of him on the one hand, is what he did with Zach Orr. But I think it was the biggest mistake of his coaching career was making him a defensive.
Well, I wouldn't just
And,
say making him. I would say sticking with him. Stan,
well,
I think,
I think he had no business
yeah,
moving from where he was to defensive coordinator,
I
taking
get
Mike
it.
McDonald's.
Right. I get it, but I also understand that they always like promoting from within. I think that this year, to me, it's an eternal mistake that at the bye week this week that John Harbaugh pretended like there was something else going on or had the hubris and didn't consider just how bad it was.
Yeah,
Because to be fair, and we all have to say it, the defense by the end of the year last year, the defense was outstanding. It was excellent.
right.
And that did ease a lot of
But
our
that was when
concerns.
That was after Dean
No
Peach
doubt.
came in.
No doubt.
And
And if
Chuck Pagano, who we love dearly, and I
mhm.
know you love him and are
Yep, very
very
close.
close to him, he didn't have the same impact that I thought he was going to have this year.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. And look, the Nami Matabiki injury hurt. I'm not trying to pretend like there aren't other
yeah,
factors
there's
involved.
extenuating.
Right.
Everybody's got in.
No doubt about it. But no, I do think that in hindsight, the bye week this year, they needed to fire, and I do wonder if almost the Bears game became poison that
That they
just
won that game.
well, I mean, just no convincing that
Oh,
like, hey, we played well against the Rams. We
yeah, right.
played, better. We're good. All's good here. And obviously that wasn't actually the case.
Hey guys, we could talk all night about what we've talked about for 15 minutes now. what's fascinating to me is usually when something like this is done, you'd think that there was a clear cut couple people that they're talk to. I have no sense, and I'd open it to Glenn because I defer to you on some of this, Glenn. And Ken, I know you know. Do you have any idea who you would like to hire? I know
Well,
I like Kevin Stefanski as a
yeah.
coach, but I don't think you could bring in a record like that after John Harbaugh.
I think the obvious candidate is Jesse Minter. I mean, I think that's the one that's going to jump off the page at everybody. And some people are going to snicker at the idea of coming from the Harbaugh tree, but those same people wanted Mike McDonald, who came from the Harbaugh tree. So I don't. It's going to be a weird conversation. Jesse Minter looks the part, central casting. Everybody raves that he is head coach ready, and it's time. He's 42. He's a guy that could be here for 20 years as the Ravens look. I think he will immediately, and I haven't even looked at Griffin, see if there are betting odds up somewhere, but I would be stunned if he wasn't the betting favorite at this point to be the Ravens' next head coach. Beyond that, I'm a Clint Kubiak guy myself. Like and I do think that Lamar Jackson's going to be involved in this because he has to be because they have to get a contract extension done with Lamar Jackson. And I say they have to. They also could just simply choose to convert some of that contract, and they want to get a contract extension done with Lamar Jackson,
Yeah, no
and
reason not to want that.
he has serious leverage, and so because of that, I do wonder if you go to him and you bring him a bunch of defensive coordinators because Brian Flores, no doubt, is a name that people will bring up, and Jeff Hafley in Green Bay, who's a hot name in this cycle, and Coach Zay Flowers in college. Um, I don't know if Lamar doesn't say, I don't want a defensive head coach. Like I want an offensive mind. I want someone with a vision for what we're doing here. Um, so I will tell you, I always am of the opinion I prefer to have an offensive coach. It's just my personal opinion. I want offensive head coaches, and so Clint Kubiak, and that can I get it? He's not just Gary because we want him to be Gary. Is that say that Clint Kubiak's the betting favorite?
Yeah,
Wow.
this is bookies.com. Action Network thinks Jesse Minter's the favorite, so
Okay.
there's different ones elsewhere. But
And
yeah,
I'm
but
guessing that
those are the three. Those are the
yeah, I'm
three.
guessing that Cliff
Four
Kingsbury's
actually.
name's
Those
up
four
there
in any
because
order.
one of the reporters had like
It
I
was
think
Rossini.
it
It was
was
Rossini.
Rossini. That
Yeah.
smells like that's planted by an agent. Like I don't know. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury going from being fired in Washington to being the head coach in Baltimore sounds.
Well, he didn't have Jane Daniels this year. It was
I hear you, but that sounds pretty big brain to me. Who else? Who else has somebody in mind?
Well, I
I
will
think
say this, that John Harbaugh was not a clear-cut candidate the last time.
Of course.
They sort of plucked him out of relative obscurity. Remember, Jason Garrett was the number one. Maybe you could bring in Jason Garrett. He's available.
Apparently, the Titans are talking to
Oh,
Jason
it's so
Garrett.
Oh
see,
my
he's back in the
gosh.
mix, Griffin.
What
Let's
about
go.
what about Mike McCarthy?
What was his wife's name? Brill
Oh yeah.
Garrett put the kibosh. She didn't want to
Wasn't
be
didn't
live
didn't
in
want to live in
Baltimore.
Reisterstown, right?
Yeah.
What about Mike
I
McCarthy?
Uh,
I,
I'm good.
Why?
yeah,
He's won a Super Bowl. John
I'm,
Gruden,
I'm, I don't want Gruden.
Marcus Freeman,
No, don't
He
want
says he's not
Marcus.
going to the NFL.
Spags,
No.
How
and
about
then the
Dan
lower.
Lanning?
I
Yeah,
wonder if
there you go.
now Clint Kubiak is the son of Gary Kubiak, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I would think that. I mean, I remember it was pretty much Steve Bisciotti who hired Gary Kubiak, wasn't it?
He was very interested in him. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I think he
but
pushed
he and John had a
John.
very good relationship too. I mean, they
I think. I think John. I mean, Steve really pushed John to hire Gary Kubiak. So I don't know if he got to know Clint Kubiak or he knows Gary very well. And if Gary tells him, my son's ready for this, wouldn't be shocked.
You
well,
know
I
what
mean, presumably
quarterback
they
has
would
done
also talk
very
to Mike McDonald,
You
obviously.
know what quarterback has done very well in the Gary Kubiak, Kevin Stefanski type of system? He's available.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. I'm just kidding, guys. Just
I'm
give him a
lying.
laugh.
That's
How
a
about a
good one.
laugh,
That's a
Glenn?
good.
Terrible person you are.
You know,
Um,
I think we hit on all the names. I,
well, but I think what Luke
I,
said, Ken, is still important, which is I think we're all assuming that it's got to be one of these names.
Bill
And
Belichick.
And I get that it's a little bit different than where the Ravens were in '08. And that part I do think matters. That when we compare it to, hey, they pulled John Harbaugh kind of off this, completely out of obscurity. They also were going to be going into that year with a rookie quarterback. And, while they did have significant veterans, obviously, in Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, the offense in particular, they didn't know where they were going quite yet. I think it's different because it's Lamar Jackson. I don't know that you can just pull an unknown unless it's an unknown that happens to be a known to Lamar Jackson.
and
That
and I and I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, at all. I mean, Lamar Jackson's definitely going to have a say in this. For as many people that on the World Wide Web and the internet that don't want that to happen, I'm sorry, that's not how it works anymore. Um, But I've also had some conversations today with people. It's like, well, who do you want, and do you trust them to hire the right coach? And I'm like, well, why shouldn't I trust them? Because they haven't hired bad coaches as far as head coaches go. Now they've only hired a couple, but they did their due diligence. There were lots of names that were bandied about before John Harbaugh became a name that was in discussion. So I do trust them. If it's Minter, if it's Kubiak, I'm not against Stefanski just because I think it'd be one of the funniest things ever. But I just think you have an opportunity to do that. But that's just, I don't think he's a bad coach. I think they fired the wrong person in Cleveland, and allowing that GM to continue to do what he's done to the organization is just just bananas
no,
to
to be
me.
fair,
I
he
go
didn't
ahead.
want Deshaun Watson either. I mean, they can't fire
Well,
the
yeah, I
owner.
know,
Like,
but he didn't. But he also drafted Drek. But be that as it may, I just I trust Bashotti, and I'm a bigger DaCosta fan than a lot of people are. I trust their process in this, but I would I'd like to find the next young hotshot coach, and I agree with Glenn wholeheartedly. I want it to be on the offensive end. I think you got to bring in an offensive minded coach and then go find a defensive coordinator to match with him.
Casey, did you say the Browns have been drafting poorly?
Yeah.
We don't speak poorly about Bel Air High School graduates. Come on.
Whatever.
and hang
Come
on,
on.
Carson Schlesinger looks like a really good draft pick for
Come on.
what
Come
it's
on,
worth.
Casey. I do have a
Like,
question, though, for the class. I am interested to hear your thoughts about this. Do Eric DeCosta's feet get held to the fire at some
Yes.
point? Because
Yes.
to me, and Glenn and I were texting back and forth about this, I think the roster building philosophies of this group are a little outdated at this point. And I don't think that the trenches were anywhere near good enough to make a deep playoff run if that kick did go in on Sunday night. And I think they were very, very much lacking on the trenches on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Where does Eric Yeah, obviously, it sure seems like he's going to be the GM and he's going to be part of the process of picking a new coach, even though that's going to be Steve's decision ultimately. Where do we think Eric fits in all this? How safe is he long term? Does he have to get back on the horse in terms of winning the division next year and making a playoff run next year to really be safe? I don't know. What do you guys think?
yeah, I mean, I
The
don't
last
think they're making a move.
for me, the last 4 years, the drafts have not been great.
I think they've been okay. Yeah, I think they've been okay. Like I think Nate Wiggins might be a football player, but he looked really bad at the end of the season.
After Nate hurt his foot against Cincinnati on Thanksgiving,
Yep,
different player after that.
yep. But I think that he might be a football player, and so I'm not down on the whole on Nate Wiggins. Malachi Starks, I kind of got to figure what he is. I don't think he's a bad football player. I don't think it's a miss, but he wasn't a game changer either. Obviously, Mike Green was not very impressive, but flashed and might develop into
Green
being a
had his
football player.
spots
Yeah,
as the season developed.
yeah.
He had a few spots.
Yeah, I think our expectations were probably too high, Stan. I think that's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to be. I don't think you're making this move because you're resetting.
Right.
Like you're making this move because you intend to win
Mhm.
and win quickly. So if there's stagnation still, if they're right back, I don't know how he isn't under the
Right.
microscope. Um,
He's under the microscope, but I don't think he's under any immediate, in other words, I don't see us waking up 2 days from now to see that Eric DeCosta's gone.
oh no, 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 I'd be
And I
stunned by that.
and
Yeah.
I think he'll have the next 2 years to really prove his mettle here in Baltimore.
But I
Um,
think I think he's I don't I think he's on the warm seat. I don't think it's the hot seat because I, I
I,
I've actually liked some of the things that he's done, and I don't think the drafts have been particularly poor. I, I think some of the player development has been in question to a time in certain positions. Not that I agree with everything that he does. I mean, some people will look at the trade that he made for Gilliam and say, "Well, why did you trade? You couldn't rush the quarterback, and now this guy's got 9 sacks. Where you go? Like what that? But the trade changed what you could do
yeah.
with your defense and with Kyle Hamilton. So something you have to give something sometimes to get something. Um, I think I agree with the trenches, more so on the offensive line than the defensive line. The defensive line's been hurt a little bit by some injuries.
But KZ, we knew the defensive line was deficient. The offensive line played pretty well last
Well, I think a lot of they did, but I also think that Lamar hides a lot of things when he's healthy.
year.
That you all of a sudden, when you have an 80% Lamar, you all of a sudden see, well, maybe this guy isn't as good as we thought he was because Lamar's not escaping, like we're used to him seeing him escape. You've got to get in the trenches a little bit more. I mean, uh, some of the signings that were done, like the Ben Cleveland thing, will always confuse me. I never understood why you sign a guy that you don't think can play. Um, but he's got to be on the hot seat, and he's going to have another high draft pick in Ravens terms. I mean, 14's as high as they've picked in a long time. I believe wasn't that where they got Hamilton?
It sure
Uh,
was. That was a fantastic pick.
yeah. So you know, I agree with Glenn. The Starks thing, I wanted the safety out of South Carolina, but I understood, he and Hamilton may have been too similar, and you needed that other guy. And you know, I, you need to hit some home runs here instead of singles and doubles if you're DaCosta in the upcoming years.
I'm fascinated to see what happens to DaCosta from this point on, because I think he was sort of, and again, he may have been John's biggest fan behind the scenes. I don't know whether he was a fan of Harbaugh's. I know they were friends and they lived next door to one another, but he had, I sensed, and the fact that Bisciotti announced it, not DaCosta, says that to me, he's been neutered. He's been sort of a half general manager. He's not really been the strongest general manager, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. That's a tough power struggle when you
He
do
had
have a
a
coach
tough
that's been there for
situation there.
it's
Yeah.
for when someone's been here for 20 years, it's really difficult.
And
And
he's personally very good
yeah,
friends with
yeah.
the owner.
It'll be I think that part will be interesting to see, right?
Yeah.
Like does Steve at some point say, by the way, this is Eric's hire.
Yeah.
We're gonna let him do it. And I don't to Ken's point, I don't think he will. I think that this is gonna be Steve's hire. I think that in his mind, the head coach is his responsibility. And I think that it'll be collaborative because that's the way that the Ravens work. I think they'll have everybody in on the meetings, but I think that it'll be Steve's, it'll be his.
And
So,
and in fairness to Eric, I think it's probably important to note that in the draft process, like he and his scouting staff are very familiar with what John wants. And they try to get players
yeah,
who fit
Yeah.
what John wants
Yeah.
to do.
yeah.
I don't think
And
anything's
maybe,
wrong with that.
yeah. And so I think it is a collaborative effort on that front. So if there are underwhelming drafts, it's probably, a lot of people who have a say in that. So
By the way, Ken, I'm sure you saw Griffin put up that in the comments they're telling us that Steve Bisciotti has spoken about Super Bowl directly before. I don't have the examples, but the comments really
Okay.
seem to think
I
that's the
just,
case.
like you
Yeah.
said, we haven't heard from him in a while. And I
Yep.
just remember the last thing I heard from him,
Yep.
wasn't a statement about winning championships. It was more as we want to put a competitive team on the field every single year.
No, I get it. I get it.
Glenn, do you
I will
think?
tell you,
Oh, go ahead.
I'll listen a little bit more about Kevin Stefanski if it's a package deal with Jim Schwartz. Like I'll listen a little bit more on being interested if that's what he's coming along with. Because whoever the head coach, if it's an offensive minded head coach, I'd be very interested in Jim Schwartz. I'd be extraordinarily interested in that. But
As head coach or
no,
defensive
not as head coach,
as
as
DC?
defensive
Yeah.
coach. As I said, to me, I want it to be.
Has Cleveland come out and said they're planning to keep Schwartz?
I they haven't officially said that he's gone,
Right.
but when there's no head coach, if you're not made the head
I'd
coach,
I'd
you're
love Jim
available.
Schwartz as our
Yeah,
defensive coordinator.
yeah.
Do you think, Glenn? Do you think Steve will talk, like have a formal press conference for the first time in
I
forever?
think he
Like
should.
by the
I
end
mean,
of
I
the, I
sure as
don't,
hell think
yeah,
he should.
yeah.
But will he? I it might be one of those things where he says, "I'm going to talk after we hire the coach. I'll be there when we announce the coach or
I
introduce him."
think that's more likely. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be nice if your owner was going to sit down and answer questions
And
about
remind
it.
me how long it typically takes to hire a coach? 3, 4 weeks?
I probably won't want to make it. What day is the Senior Bowl?
That's usually the last week of January, right?
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Hang on a second.
Did
I
they
just want to make
change
sure.
that calendar? They
They
were
did at one
You know
messing with
what?
point.
I think
stuff.
the East-West game might be before.
It is.
And then
But the Senior Bowl is the 31st, so that means the week starts on the 26th.
mhm.
So I think that ideally they'd want to have a coach in place by the 26th, with the caveat being that, for example, if it's Minter and I mean, I don't think any of us think the Chargers are making a Super Bowl run, but if that's the case, then I don't think they'll let that be what deters them from hiring their guy. But if it's Clint Kubiak, for example, I think a lot of us believe the Seahawks could be making a Super Bowl run. Um, I'd be surprised if they valued that more. I think they would just say, "Hey, we trust Eric DeCosta and his team to go get the job done at the Senior Bowl, and we think we know what Clint Kubiak's opinion would be about these players, and we can do
Hey,
that at the combine."
Casey, I'm just curious. What do you think of Clint, the Redskins offensive coordinator? Clint,
Cliff
Cliff,
Kingsbury.
yeah.
yeah.
That's gonna be a no for me, dog.
I agree with KZ. By the way.
I think there are people that are meant to be coordinators, and there are people that can be head coaches, and he's meant to be a coordinator, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like if
Okay.
you hire Kingsbury, Lamar's going to be in shotgun 90 to 95% of the time next year. And like people are going to go crazy about it. I guarantee you. And it might be like a really productive first year, but by the second year, it's going to start to backslide. And I thought that Washington's offense ran with better rhythm and timing when Mariota and Johnson were in at quarterback rather than Daniels this year. It was not a great year for
Daniels had a
Cliff and Daniel.
terrible sophomore season.
Well, he was injured a lot.
Injuries.
He was
Yeah.
injured mostly.
But
Yeah.
I think Kingsbury got saddled with the quarterback that maybe was Kyler Murray his quarterback in college?
He was
Uh,
his
Kingsbury had him at
quarterback at
Texas Tech before he went to.
Yeah, and
Um,
Kingsbury famously said that if I were an NFL head coach and had the #1 pick, I'd take Kyler Murray, and then
Yeah,
he
well,
got that
was
job
then
to
I'm
pick
not
Kyler Murray.
interested in him
Yeah.
either. That's terrible.
What about Bobby Petrino, KZ?
Get out of here. Just do
I'm
it.
I'm
Come
just
on.
I'm
It's
not being
normally you're
serious
doing
today,
Stan
folks.
shtick now. Luke.
Okay.
You're
No,
stealing
that
Stan
was
shtick.
a Drew Forrester shtick right
Yeah.
there. That's what that
I mean,
Does he know who Bobby Petrino is?
was.
do I know who Bobby Petrino
No,
is?
Drew.
No, Drew.
Just Drew.
I'm confident that's not the
Drew,
case.
I'm confident he knows who he is.
I don't know.
Look, again, this has been my answer for 10 years when somebody has said, as I've been banging this drum, well, who are they going to hire? I go, it's not my job. Like I trust the people to hire somebody, and I go back to it's like they found Harbaugh, who lasted 18 years And, I think it was too long, but that doesn't happen. And he's a winning coach in this league by far. And there were things that he did in game and in the playoffs that it was time for me, and it's been time. And I
Yeah.
think they can do better. And hopefully they do. And
I-
I
And I
trust,
and
I
I
trust
largely
they.
agree, Ken, but that last part, like sometimes you got to be careful because
Well, I get sometimes, the grass isn't always greener on the other
yep,
side. But I mean,
that doesn't mean that I
well,
think it was the wrong. I still think
that
it was the right thing to do, but
doesn't mean I can't put a new set of fertilizer on the lawn.
I agree.
So,
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Obviously, we'll have a lot more to say in the coming weeks as we start to learn more about candidates and who's going to be in to visit and what the staff might look like. So we'll be doing that. Thank you to the Costas Inn. Two great locations, North Point Boulevard for the OG, the new one in Timonium at the Grandstand. It's the Costas Inn. It's a Baltimore institution. And if you haven't been to the new location, what are you doing with your life? 1-800-GAMBLER, helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services if you or a loved one has a gambling problem. Appreciate you guys hanging out on short notice. Griffin wants to see one more thing. That's a picture of John Harbaugh arriving for an interview. There you go. Thank you, Mark Viviano.